a message. I give thanks for the spirit of continuity, the cyclical nature of life, that things keep regenerating, coming and going, and giving us ever always giving us opportunities for expanded growth and renewal every day. I give thanks. Ashe. So in honor of, I'm just gonna take this because I'll be trying to be all tall for this thing and trying to adjust it. It just never works. So I'm just gonna hold it. In honor of our organization, as you know, Woze is not only a spiritual organization, but we have a very important educational component. So in honor of Baba Jahi and all of the reports he's going to get very soon, the topic of my presentation today is my summer vacation. Right? That's typically the type of thing you ask the children when they get back. They do a little essay on my summer vacation. Now, knowing Baba Jahi and Eleomide, he probably has the children designing some computer system or something a little more advanced than what we're used to. But my presentation has a second name as well. Just like you remember Bullwinkle, you know, who used to watch Bullwinkle, the cartoon, right? Well, back in the day, they would always have two titles, and they would say, join us next week for, perils in the jungle, or, last of the bongos. It would always have two titles. So I decided I'm going to give mine two titles, too. So it's my summer vacation, or don't hurry back from anything that requires patience. Don't hurry back from anything that requires patience. So this year I went to Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia. And let me also say that I'm sharing with you about my trip. I was inspired by Mama Mona and also Brother Menu and their sharings that they give when they come back to town from the places that they go. So I think it's important, as they do, to share information about what they saw and what they learned. So this is part of that tradition. So thank y'all both for the inspiration. So this year we went to Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia. It's a yearly trip that I take with my dad. And we have a family day in Florida that's usually about a week apart from our family reunion that happens somewhere in the South Carolina, Georgia area. So it just happens like that every year. They're usually about a week apart. So my dad and I stay down there for about a week. The family reunion in South Carolina, Georgia area is for my father's side of the family. The family in Florida is my father's mother's side of the family. And as you can tell by the areas that they were in, they are farming areas, agricultural areas. So our family is huge. My father has 10 siblings. His father had 13. His grandfather had 22. And my grandmother had 12 siblings. So just a lot of people. Right. And so it's a blessing. It's definitely a blessing. Sadly, there's always people making their transition. So that's a hard experience to have, even though we know that they're not gone from us. It's a hard experience to have. But the beautiful thing also is that there's constant births. So one of the best things about being down there every summer is the children. Now, this is a photo of my little cousins. Every time I take my shoes off, there's some little girl waiting to hop into them as soon as I walk out of the room. So I take my shoes off. I got up to go to the bathroom or go do something at my aunt's house. And sure enough, the little girls had already taken their shoes off, and they were walking around in my shoes. So they had the best time just playing in my shoes. And I noticed how much they pay attention to me. Just sitting, they watch me, they want to do the things that I do, they want to go places with me, which is a nice experience because I don't get a chance to be with children very much. So that time is invaluable. So we also, aside from spending time laying on the living room floor making rubber band bracelets, which are very popular right now. They have a little loom and they make all these bracelets. So we laid on the floor and we made rubber band bracelets together. The other thing that I did was notice that the last time I was there, they didn't have any books with people of African descent on them. So the books were like somewhere off, and they had to ask their parents, where are my books, which told me they're not reading them very often. But also when they got them out, there was not a black or brown face in the books. So before I left, I went to Marcus and got whatever I could. and distributed them to the children. And I kicked them off of the television, and they literally laid on their stomachs in the living room, and I read them stories. And that was also a very enriching experience, just seeing them so excited about these stories and guessing, I know what's going to happen next. I bet that this happens. Just they were so excited. So that was a beautiful thing. And the last time that I saw these children, they were babes in arms. So then now every year I get to watch their development. And it seems pretty quick. The little girl on the right-hand side, her nickname is Pootie. I have no idea what this child's real name is. But I remember her as a little baby, and I photographed her as a little baby. So what's also happening is because I photograph my family every year that I go back, I have this chronological sort of record of the children as they're growing up. So my dad got time to hang out with his sisters and meet all of his nieces and nephews, and he absolutely loved it. Many of y'all know that my father is experiencing Alzheimer's. And one of the things that I noticed, and one of the other reasons that I'm so dedicated to going back down south every year, is that he is so upful when he is down there and around all of those children. When he's around a lot of family, and especially when he's with children, he is so, he's so like high in spirits. So I make sure that I take him on a regular basis. This was a surprise birthday party that we have for my Aunt Vicky. It's my dad's sister. And she is 70 years old and looks absolutely wonderful, mother of 6, and just a great lady. So this is my father and 3 of his sisters, and these are the 3 that live in the town, the ones that could make it to the event. The other nice thing is I get to hang around with, again, not only the little children, but the older children who are on their way to college. So because of the fact that we don't have a lot of people in my family who've gone to college, those of us who have an opportunity to provide mentorship to the ones who are on their way. So this is my little cousin Cashmere. I didn't even recognize her. I haven't seen her since she was a little girl because she lives in Atlanta and she usually isn't able to come to visit. But I got a chance to link up with her. Now we're working together to find her scholarships because this is her junior year of high school. So, it's not in a criticism to her parents, but they're just like, we don't know about all that stuff. But I'm coming and telling her, all right, it's junior year. You got to get this, you got to get that. Make sure you do it. And she's like, well, where do I even start? And I'm like, start by calling me, and we'll work together to do it. All right. So this is the group picture that we took at our party, and this is just a small cross-section of the family. These are just the people who came out that day and the children that are associated with them. Some people whose parents couldn't make it, their children are still there. Why? Because everybody knew that it was an important event. So if your parent had to work, it's like, it's all right, you can come and pick up my children. And that nature and that spirit of communal living and care is also something that I can remember appreciating and enjoying living in Benin. For me, these times remind me of our Africanness in our culture, in our practices, in our reverence of elders and communal care for the children. That's evidence of the things that we talk about. So we also obviously come in different shapes, sizes, and colors. And I have a little cousin who is of mixed heritage, and he definitely can use some conversation around understanding himself as an African man. And so I make sure I spend that time with him when I'm there. And not to say that, I'm just perfect and but there's things that I see and I have an opportunity to share. And that is a very special relationship that has been forged over time. So it's a blessing. And his mother and I work together in that. I talk to her in advance. Well, what's going on with Cameron? And we talk about what his needs are. And then I come in from the other side to do what I can to assist. And this is my dad and Pootie, who definitely radiated toward him quite a bit. newlyweds, my cousins, who I hadn't seen in years. And again, this was a event that sort of reclaimed the family. We come together from time to time to get together for birthday parties, etc. It's nice to get together and have it not be a funeral, right? So we come together weekly at Wose as a family of sorts, and we have an opportunity to catch up. We have our huggy kissy time, as Mama Angina likes to call it, and we get a chance to just enjoy each other. And that's an important component of life. You know, Africa wasn't just all about scholarliness. It was also about celebration and community, exactly. So we had our little cupcakes for my aunt, and then we did what Africans like to do. We got to dancing, right? So as you know, dance is an important component of our social lives as African people. And so they put some music on, and we got to dancing, and my daddy was cutting a rug. And you know, it's so funny because I always say that, you know, I take this trip and I typically will say, well, I'm making sure that my dad gets down there, but I realized this year really that the sojourn also really feeds my spirit as well. And it's hard to travel with my dad, right? You know, he's definitely very fussy. He has to get the wheelchair at the airport. Either that or he has a hard time walking all the way to the gate, you know, because it's a long distance, and then waiting for, but he never wants to admit that. So instead of being like, Daddy, you know you need a wheelchair, I had to be much more diplomatic in it, A, out of respect for my father, and B, with an understanding that my balance is needed in approaching anything. And I have to be strategic in my approach. So what I told him is, look, Dad, this is our trick to get through security quicker. We're just going to get you a wheelchair. I know you said you don't need it, but we're just going to use this so that we get through security quicker. And he's like, okay. But that's the way that, you know, I get him to do that. He never wants to eat. You know, right now, one of the things that he does is refuses food. And so instead of, I always ask him, are you hungry, Dad? And he says, no, I don't want anything to eat. And I'll say, you know what, I'll just give you a little something. And then I give him his full plate, and he eats the whole thing. But I just know that that's how it is. And even though, with all that said, I'm really happy to have an opportunity to spend time with him. One of the things that our traditions also teach us is we talk about how you treat your children, and it being training for how your children treat you, right? And an application of M.I.T balance as well in that situation. You want to not spoil them too much, but you definitely want to love them, nurture them, show them kindness, and you'll get that back in the end, right, later on in life. It's about reciprocity, which is at the heart of M.I.Tian philosophy. So again, since the reunions are about a week apart, we stayed with our family this time. I spent a lot of time in the playground. So as you can see, the only way I can get a photo from this vantage point is to be on one of these things. So the children are like, we want to go to the playground. And I'm like, okay. So we go. And they're like, get on this with us. And so I do. I also dragged them out of the house. There is the St. Johns River in the town of Palaco, where my family lives. And instead of them staying inside the house under the air conditioning and watching TV all day, I pulled them out. And we went on a grasshopper hunt. So we went hunting for grasshopper, and it gave me an opportunity to talk to them about nature. We have a class here called Rhythms of Nature, and we appreciate the lessons that nature shows us. So it gives me an opportunity to learn, because it's a different climate and a different part of our ecosystem in that part of the country. So I get to see plants that I don't normally get to see, and insects and frogs and lizards and all these great things. And in the beginning, the kids are like, what are we doing? But by the end, they're like, there's another one, there's another one, there's another one. So they really get excited about being out in nature as well. And it was a fun way to get them out there and help them to understand that nature can teach you a lot of things, while I'm learning that lesson as well. One of the things we see is that many of our towns are dying. So when we go home to visit, when we go to visit the towns where our families are from, or even towns where we may have grown up, we see this desolation, and we see a lot of abandoned buildings and blight, et cetera, et cetera. And it made me think, what can we do? Like, we talk about our spiritual philosophy, we do our scholarly work, and we talk about social activism from an educational standpoint, and also understanding using the tools that the ancestors have given us to live our lives. How do we apply that to help our family members who are living today with certain social realities? And I'm not going to pretend that I have an answer for that necessarily, but I think that it's something that's important for us to think about. You know, instead of me going every year and just kind of showing up and do what I do, it's like, all right, well, what's the next step? What else can I do? I've gone all over the world and done development work. What type of development work can I do here in the place that matters to my family? And that's sort of the journey that I'm on right now. This is one of my little cousins. This is my cousin's house that I stayed at, that my dad and I stayed at. And I saw him with this T-shirt, and I thought, that's disturbing. That's very, very disturbing. And the T-shirt, it says, "You've been owned." And it's a Nike T-shirt. So it's supposed to be a statement about, oh, you know, I've lorded over you and I've reigned over you from a sports context. But I have a problem with a black child walking around with a T-shirt that says "You've been owned." So I was like, "Sweetie, let me see your T-shirt." And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm probably going to have a little conversation with your mom about this. But those are again, we're talking about how do you have those conversations without coming across as preachy? I've already been down there. I'm bringing black books. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I have to maintain a healthy balance in the relationship. So I was like, okay, well, we'll broach this topic another time. So after we left Florida, we went to Savannah. And Savannah is where our reunion was to take place, in Savannah, Georgia. Typically, there's a couple of days between the Family Fun Day in Florida and our reunion in South Carolina. So I take my dad for a vacation. My dad has not taken vacation the entire time I've been alive. So, you know, our vacation time has always been, we go visit family, which is nice. But sometimes you just need to sit down and blink. You know, sometimes you just need to breathe. And my father has worked very hard all his life. So I take him for a couple of days of just restful vacation. So we went to the Westin Resort in Savannah. And the people there now are like, "Hey, you're back. It's nice to see you," you know. So they've gotten to know us, which is very nice. These are my dad's cousins, who two of which he hasn't seen. The two ladies on the right-hand side, he hasn't seen them since he was in his 20s. So it's been a long time, and they heard that he was in town, and they were like, "What? We haven't seen him in years." And so they hopped in the car. My other cousins, Cousin Wash and Cousin Shirley, on the left-hand side, were coming for a doctor's appointment in Savannah, and they hopped on in the car with them and came down just so that they could see my dad and meet me. So that was always very nice. It's always very nice because every time we go down there, we're reconnected with family members that we haven't seen. And it reminds me of the large, or the size of our family. And this is my dad just relaxing. Finally got him to just sit down in the chair. A day later, he had on shorts. But this was the day I was like, "All right, Dad, just try this chair out. Just try this one." You know, and sometimes we have to do that. We have to urge our elders in a peaceful way to just relax. This is the farm where my father grew up, and we still own the land. And I manage the land as well. So I take my dad out to the land every year, and he has these really very vivid memories of his time there. And he's like, "Oh, I can see everybody here like it was yesterday." So apparently it's some sort of trigger for him. And he goes out to the land, and he's like, "I can see the house." And then he starts to tell me about the family history. It's in South Carolina. This is in Estill, South Carolina. And it's beautiful land. The sad part, though, is that it was parsed out between different family members. And some people have lost their parcels of land to taxes. Other people Other people have sold theirs because somebody was sick or whatever. So this is one of the few parcels of land that remains. And this was actually from the time when people were getting 40 acres and a mule land. So some people were not given that land, but they were given the opportunity to buy it, as if we hadn't worked enough. But so they successfully purchased the land. My great great grandfather purchased the land, and then one of his wishes that he left in his will was that each of his daughters would have a parcel of land. So he gave a parcel of land to each of his daughters. And I managed this last parcel of land, as if I know how to manage a farm. But I'm like, this farm ain't going nowhere because this is our land. So, well, it's interesting. I'm going to answer that question in just a bit. So the other thing that's nice about going out of town, I don't know why I act like I can't do this here, but I love Savannah because it's so flat and you can see everything. So I get up and watch the sunrise every morning and typically go out to watch the sunset. It's the sunrise, actually. Yeah, so this big, giant red disc, it was so cool. And that was one of my favorite things. I love doing photography early in the morning. When I have my dad with me, I can't leave him in the room by himself, but I can still take photos from the hotel. So I go to typically we might be in the hotel by the elevator. So I'll go out into the little elevator area, or I'll take photos from our bedroom. And he's always knocked out sleep still, but I get to enjoy the sunrise every morning. Another family reunion. This is my cousin Renee, and this is her restaurant, Nairobi's Grits and Gravy, and it is in Savannah, Georgia. Cousins we didn't even know we had. And they're one of the children of one of my great-grandfather's 22 siblings. So I went to the restaurant. I heard that they were there. I was one of the people on the family reunion committee. So I wanted to check it out so that I could recommend that folks go there during the reunion. And so I did, and I walked in, and I, was like, hey, well, I'm your cousin, and we're coming to support your restaurant. And this was the first day the second day we were there. This was the second time we had eaten there, and we ate there every day while we were in town. Now, I like soul food, but I wanted to make sure that we supported her as much as we possibly could. During our family reunion, one of the activities that we did was meeting our family. Everybody had to go around and find 4 people that they had either not ever met or that they didn't know very well, and find out one interesting thing about 4 people, and then turn the info in to me, and I made it into a game later. But it was nice because everybody got to do their own little living historical tribute, right? Instead of waiting until folks pass and you find out about the interesting things that they did, I let people tell about who they were and some of the things that they had accomplished. And it never ceased to amaze me, some of the things that people had done. We had people who were mayors of towns in the areas where our ancestors had been enslaved. People who were the chiefs, chief coroner. Folks had started their own businesses and owned a significant amount of property in downtown Atlanta, and different things that we never might have known if we hadn't just talked to them. And a lot of times, people don't big themselves up, so to speak. So having the opportunity to celebrate them is great. And just see different family members. This is one of our eldest family members, Cousin Ethel Lee, who's always fabulous. She always has beautiful jewelry and always very stylish. She's one of the people that I enjoy getting to see, but she's also a living historical record. So I had a chance to sit with her and just document some of the stories that she had to tell, and she helped me to identify some of the people and photos that I had. So then people just enjoyed seeing one another. There's a lot of intergenerational interaction, which is also a beautiful thing because, much like my dad, our elders are kept vital by having an opportunity to hang out with younger people, and vice versa. Our younger people get to benefit from the knowledge of our elders. We also took a historical tour. So we did a tour by using an African-owned tour company, right? So we're definitely all about Ujamaa. We're patronizing our cousin's restaurant and doing everything that we can to patronize other African-owned businesses in Savannah. And this tour is run by a group from the First African Baptist Church, which was founded in 1788. So it was a stop on the Underground Railroad, and the tour was really very informative. This was us just getting off the tour bus, about to go into the church for one part of our tour. It was a bus tour and combined tour of the church. And this is the church in Savannah. So we had to go downstairs into the sort of church basement area as a start. And then we walked up into the main sanctuary. So we're told that the lights are real gold. And from a time long past, the church still looks very original. But what they also pointed out is that the fire code had to be changed for the number of people who could be in the church, because folks over time have gotten more rotund. And so now they have a fewer amount of people that can be allowed to be in the church. That's what the fire code says. And on the one hand, I was like, okay. But on the other hand, I was like, I wonder if that's really a valid statement. But, anyway, so this was something that I thought was cool. They're talking about this is for the 165th anniversary, and this is a roll call of the members and the deacons who have passed during that time frame that the church has been around. So we revere our ancestors, but we're seeing this with other folks as well. And during the tour, we got a breakdown of the quilts and what they mean. So how many people know about the quilts and the role that quilting played in the abolitionist movement? No, some of it, right. So the quilts have different patterns, and each of the patterns is a statement. And so the gentleman here is telling us, breaking down exactly what is said on the quilt. And I videotaped him. I can't repeat for you what it was, but this quilt is basically a coded message. And at least one symbol from this code would be placed on a quilt, and the quilt would be hung out of a window to help guide people on the Underground Railroad. So it was an informational system, but he broke down an entire message in this quilt. So again, we see very creative use of the arts in the liberation movement, and also applique, which is a ancient artistic practice that is very popular in West Africa. My cousin Miriam, who is currently the president of our family, or of the family reunion, he is the keeper of the family reunion, makes sure it happens, and he knows everybody. So he is like a griot. He keeps the information of the family and the historical record of the family, and typically is in his head. But now we're using technology to capture that information from him as well. And we also made a stop to the Civil Rights Museum, where they had a lunch counter you could sit at and be berated as if you were back in the time protested. I was like, you push a button and it says, I'm a white man or I'm a black man. And so you push the white man button. It's like, oh, hello, sir. What can I get you? We have very nice apple pie. But then you push the black man and it's like, we don't serve your kind here. This, that, and the other. I was like, that's interesting. Okay. So this is actually my cousin sitting with the statue, and the statue of the white woman behind the counter that's refusing to serve him. And also you see the sister in the back in the kitchen, right? So you can't get served there, but you sure can cook. This was also part of our tour. And I don't think I've ever seen, but thank God, for both of us, that I've never seen a Klan uniform this close. And it said no cameras and recording, but I was like, I'm going to have to do something to this picture. Like, I'm going to have to take a picture of this, and I'm going to have to do something to it, because I can't just stand behind these little chains and look at this without any energy. So this is us at the restaurant, and we basically flooded the restaurant after our tour. I told people, hey, we have this restaurant, our family's restaurant here. Please consider during the free time going to the restaurant. And everybody opted to go to the restaurant. So it was full to bursting. I told her that we might come, but long story short, she had a few patrons in there already. So we waited, and then she served us. Everybody got food, but she was overjoyed that we had basically applied Ujamaa. And again, these principles aren't just ideas. They're things that we can do. Very simple things. Just folks waiting to be served. And what a blessing to be able to look in the kitchen and look down the line, and everybody's my family. In this restaurant, I'm about to eat food prepared for me by my family. Yes, with love, by my family. And they're going to benefit from me having done so. The other project that I have been working on is the sorting and cataloging of our family's photo archives. So everybody's got their thing, right? For Brother Manu, it's history. For Brother Davis, he also likes to learn more about spiritual practices and rituals, etc. And for me, I really love history as told through the visual arts, and specifically photography. So since my family, the house that they live in, or that they lived in South Carolina, has been there for decades. It was the house that my great-grandparents lived in with the youngest of the 13 siblings. So over the years, every time anybody did anything important, they shot a photo and they sent it home to the parents, to the grandparents. When they passed away, my great aunts took over the house, but the same practice continued. So there's this amazing photo archive from the 1900s all the way up to now that I have, and that I'm in the process of scanning. Zenzele came, and she came for a couple of weeks to help me scan a massive amount of photos. And it's just, I have the opportunity to clean them and catalog them and archive them. And then I have to document my process so that everybody can understand how to go about doing that. How many of us go to our family's houses and see photos of ourselves or other family members that we haven't seen, right? All the time. But what happens when there's a flood or a hurricane or a fire, or somebody just loses their mind, and then all of a sudden all that stuff is gone, all that history is gone. So it's up to us while we can to get those photos. Now they're digitized, and right now we have approximately 1,000 photos that are online that people can go and download and buy, and we're using the proceeds from the purchase of the photos as a fundraiser for our next family reunion. So there's just a lot of really interesting photos, and some that I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And we have no idea who folks are, because a lot of people who could identify folks have made their transition. So now we're trying to figure out who they are by showing these photos to different people, and it's quite an adventure, but it's enjoyable. This was a special prayer meeting where my great-grandfather was becoming a deacon, so they had a ceremony. And this is a photo from the ceremony. They had their picture made, as they say. My favorite is the lady in the front with the little saddle shoes. And oddly, there was a photo that I found of this adorable little baby, and I was like, gee, she looks really familiar. That's me. So I hardly ever get to see pictures of myself, and I'm like, oh, hey, that's me. The other thing that was really important about our activity down there was that it was my great-uncle James, my great-great-uncle James's 100th birthday. So this was a photo that I shot of him about 3 years ago, and we made a photo cake for him and dedicated the reunion to him and did a presentation about the things that he's seen throughout the years. So one of the things that we showed was a clip of the Nicholas brothers dancing. and Malcolm X speaking. So we just had different photos and clips from over that time. And that really made him feel full because everybody had come together in celebration of him as an elder. And we have to remember that sometimes our elders forget how important and special they are to us, and we have to tell them. So this was our game where everybody got to tell, we got to guess who the different and interesting things that we had captured about people. We got to guess who belonged to that activity. We called it Who Done It. So it was like, who was the postmaster general for 6 years, or who was recently a mom, or who knows how to sew quilts and blankets. And people had to guess, and then you step forth. So again, this was part of our sort of historical tribute to ourselves and a creative way to help people learn about one another. And what trip down south would be complete without church? You got to go to church. And I will say that I sincerely enjoyed myself. The church that I went to, they had a really good choir, and the minister was also, he brought a really good message, and it wasn't one of those uncomfortable, you're all going to HE double hockey sticks, messages. It was really just about not allowing people to steal your joy. And even though he's a Christian minister in a Baptist church, that message is still real and true. So everybody had a good time. So my cousin, everybody's standing up singing. Our family, it's a small, very modest congregation, much like ours, but our family absolutely filled up the pews and really blessed the community. And because of the fact that the church is my great-great-uncle's sort of social, that's his social group, we made sure that we did a tribute to him there as well. So this is him in the bottom right corner holding the plaque that we gave him during the church ceremony. We worked together with the minister to do a special presentation to him. During the tithes and offerings collection part, it was like I'm watching the whole thing happen, and it was like pageantry. It was like everything was just happening. Everything fell into place. And so I was watching, not just as an attendee of the service, but just looking at the sort of mechanics and logistics associated with that space. And it was pretty interesting viewpoint. As you can see, these are children who are laying on one on top of the other because we were in church for a long, good time. Yes, where I would be like, why are we still here? What else do they have to say? Why? I know, so I'm watching them feeling very sympathetic. But again, very rousing. My cousin, who's a minister, they invited him up into the pulpit, and he caught the spirit and started singing. And this lady, she was definitely very into things, and I want to show you that she bammed a hole in her tambourine, honey, and she was still tapping it. And she was still tapping it and just singing right along, and that was an uplifting thing for me to see. Again, the minister was very rousing, and it wasn't that the fake show pageantry, but it was really an encouraging message, and people were really feeling it. So that was nice as well. And then there was a portion where they brought people forth and prayed and laid their hands on people, a practice that we know the origin of that practice, and we carry out that practice here too. We sent Bakari off to school with special blessings after we laid hands on him and said a prayer for him. So the thing that stuck out about this photo for me is that we have children who are watching this and learning through example. So they're not being talked at, they're not being talked to about the philosophy of the thing. They're watching this practice actually being put into practice. And just like here at Iliomade, they see us when we are drumming, when we are holding our ceremonies, when we are holding our service. We have, Jalea here, we have other children who have watched us actually carry out these practices, which is an important component of the survival of a community. And it wouldn't be Baptist church without somebody falling out. right? Without somebody falling out. So that was sort of the end of our first trip. So I ended up having to go back to Savannah about a week after that because we had a family issue that arose. It was a situation that was not easy, and I had an elder who was in an unsafe situation and acting very strangely, and nobody was doing anything about it. And I was like, I can't not do that. I can't leave this elder in this situation. I can't pray and pour libation to the ancestors without respecting the elders that we still have in the family. I felt like I couldn't face the ancestors if I left the situation as it was. And so his behavior was also threatening to dishonor our family in a major way. And we have a very old and very prominent family. And we're not rich people, but we're people of character. And so I'll share with you that when I was going down there, I was mad. I was definitely irritated. But I got to SFO and I realized that I needed something else. So I called on an elder family member who's one of my cousins. I called him for guidance. And he basically told me what is found in the Hosea, in the book of Ani. You should have a Hosea close to you. And let's take a look at page 58. Now, he has no idea what the Hosea is. He has no idea. If I said anything about Kemet, he'd probably be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But he definitely gave me this important truth. He said, and his statements essentially added up to, answer not elders who are angry. Let them have their way. Speak sweetly when they speak bitterly. For it's a remedy that soothes the heart. Contentious answers provoke strife, and eventually your will be broken. Let not your heart be troubled, for they will soon return to praise when their hour of rage has passed. When your words please the heart is inclined to accept them. Seek self-mastery then, and your self-mastery will subdue them. And that was a really important message to have. So I'm glad that I had sense enough to call on an elder for guidance, but I also had sense enough to call on the ancestors. And I called on his siblings. He is the last of 13 siblings. I called on his siblings to help me in the situation and support me in the situation and help it go as smoothly as possible. And it also, the situation reminds me of a saying that I heard a little further down in the trip: don't hurry back from anything that requires patience, right? So I had to stay in the midst of that experience and not try to go to my comfort zone of Tracy's blazing in and trying to, make change with good intentions, because he was in a very unsafe situation. What I had to do is stay in the midst of it for a minute, pray around it, and then handle it in the most peaceful manner as possible. And sure enough, everything turned out. I would never have guessed things would turn out so well. So I went down there. We talked to him. I called upon a coalition of other family members who came out as well, and to help rectify the situation. And two of which were police officers. So everybody came together. When I was getting on the plane, I will tell you, and this is my testimony, everybody except for one person had bowed out. People were like, I don't have enough money to get there. Other people were like, I'm uncomfortable. He gets upset and I don't want to really go over there and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I ain't going to worry about it. I'm giving it to God. I know God's got it. I'm just moving ahead knowing that I'm doing the right thing. Sure enough, I got there and everybody showed up in the end, and everything worked out very well. I was able to get the rest of our family heirlooms out of the house, and also we were able to convince him to go down to Florida to live with his son so that his son can look after him properly. So that ended up really being a blessing. The other thing that I was working on was in relationship to the family land. People had been sort of piecing off of our land for years. So the parcel of land that I'm managing now is supposed to be 20 acres. And all of a sudden, the records are showing that it's only 15. And I was like, show me the records. So I had to go to South Carolina. I stayed in Georgia and commute back and forth and actually go to the records office, pull the deeds, pull tax records from as far back as like 1920 in these big old giant books. I have never seen books this big. Giant ledger books, and I'm like, boom, opening these little books, carrying them like this from the little records office, from room to room, because they're so big and heavy. But that's what I have to do to make sure that the sanctity of my family's land is guarded. And was able to pull the deeds and some additional information about the land, but that was not easy. We also have some, what I'll say is, people due to the sun, it has caused the sun and various other factors. It has caused a reddening of the neck area, living on the parcel of land just behind ours, which further complicates the situation. So it's not like I could go out and talk to them and be like, hey, what's going on with this, right? So basically I had to go through the proper channels, tax office, land office, and bureaucracy in small town America is worse than bureaucracy in big town America. And then on top of that, we're in the South. So long story short, did everything I could there. There's still some research to be done, but I got a lot done that I wouldn't have been able to do from here. And we're in a much better position. So then I was tired after a week of that, and I decided I'm going to take some time for myself. So I went back to Savannah to visit a few places that were important. There's a cemetery in Savannah. Many of you know that I'm studying about the memorialization practices of our people. In the cemetery, this was the cemetery where the plaque is gone. This is a cemetery. This was an old, quote unquote, colored cemetery. And one of the interesting things about the cemetery is folks don't believe, as we know, we don't believe that when people make their transition that that's it, right? We believe that it's basically a change in their social status. So in the cemetery, every aisleway that you can drive down in the cemetery has a street name. And it's so that the ancestors can find their way around when they are going from place to place, right? So every single row has a different street name. There are also a number of burial sites that were just sort of mass graves. The people weren't necessarily identified. So there was a burial spaces for previously enslaved people. And you can see some of the grave markers in the background. And then others are just marked, the mass graves are just marked where there are multiple people who are laying. The other thing that we learned about during the tour that I was taking, the one that I mentioned earlier, is this tree. Now, what do you notice about this tree? You see the marks at the top. Well, the guy who was giving us the tour referred to those as oops marks. This was one of the trees that people would be tied to and then beaten. So those marks in the tree, obviously the tree has grown over time, but they're from the whip. That and if somebody missed the mark, then it would hit the tree. So as you can see, the indentations in the tree are very deep. And when I heard about this on the tour, I said to myself, well, next time I'm in Savannah, I'm going back. I'm going back to that space because I have to pray there, have to pour libation. And that's what I did. I went and I poured libation to the spirits who had perished there and thanked them for their bravery. Because a lot of times, people are being beaten because they're defiant. Beating someone is a way to break them. So you can see the marks a little closer in the tree. But I went and prayed and poured libation, and that was how my day started. It was a very disturbing experience, so what I did was looked for comfort in nature. And this was one of the flowers that I saw in that had grown not too far from where the tree was. So one of the things that we say here in our meditation often is, I seek refuge in Mose, right? And we're seeking refuge in our community, but one of the things that we can always do is seek refuge in nature. It's always there for us, whether it's the sky, the trees, flowers, whatever it is. The last place that I went was a place called Oyotunji Village, and it's in South Carolina as well, and it's a Yoruba village. So it is open. It's a village that is open for citizenship, so to speak. It's open to all African Americans or all people of African descent. And the folks who founded the village and live in the village view it as a healing space. I learned a lot about the village from the tour, but there's also this really good film, The Yoruba of Olatunji Village. It's very interesting, and it talks about their spiritual philosophy and the founding of the village and how they run it. They show some clips from interviews that have been done. So very interesting film. I definitely recommend it if you have time to watch it. In the village, they talk about the priests also being doctors and helping to heal people from one of the greatest illnesses that our people are afflicted with, which is cultural amnesia, right? Cultural amnesia. They talked about how the town is blessed by priests and priestesses. You also see some of the Kemetic symbols that people had, who were founders of the village, had learned about and adopted, and they've incorporated them into their practice in the places that they found to be appropriate. Let's see. They perform various dances and held various celebrations. They perform various dances depending on which Orisha they're celebrating, and they have temples dedicated to each of the foundational Orishas, which is really cool. So when you go there, you're in a temple, and it's a spiritual space. So this is obviously the temple to Shango, and they celebrate these virtues like a fiery spirit, the fiery spirit of Shango, or the dedication to perfection, like with Oshun. And we do the same with our Necheru. We talk about Heteru, we talk about the different Necheru and their virtues, not only to learn about them, but so that we can identify them within ourselves. It's important for us to understand that this fire that exists within us is that energy from those Necheru and from those Orishas, right? And instead of looking at the fact that we have that fire as a bad thing, we have to understand just how we can direct it, right? We just need to channel it in the right direction. So how many of us know somebody that'll get somebody told in a minute, right? We all know somebody like that, right? And but you know what the beautiful thing about that is, that's necessary sometimes. Sometimes the truth needs to be told. We need those people, and instead of demonizing them, we have to help all of us to understand when is the proper time to apply that and what's the best way, but understand that it's a healthy thing. It's a good thing. And paying attention and learning more about the Necheru and the Orishas is a healthy way to do that. They talked about how more Africans were enslaved in that part of the country than any other place, so they thought it was a good place to found the village. So they have about 9 acres of the village there, and about 30 families, I think, living there right now. They also have a number of Egungun, or ancestral spirits, and they built a dwelling for the Egunguns. They have their spiritual leaders buried in tombs on the land, and they have the above ground tombs, much like you see in New Orleans, because of because it's the low country, and it's prone to flooding. And this was a dragonfly that kind of followed me for a bit, and then landed on the tongue of this fish sculpture at the Yemiya temple. So they also take time to pay homage to the African women. Thank y'all for coming. Pay homage to the African women who are, oh my gosh, it's so late. the African women who have made a difference to our movement and to our community, as well as the Agunguns. So I ended my trip with with one of the elders of the community, who is also a priestess and does readings. And she was so encouraging during the time that I was there. And she's been there. She's one of the founders, so she's been there from the beginning. So I encourage y'all, if you're in that area, to visit that place. But one of the things that I'll leave you with, the idea is that one of the questions that I asked them about their village being open was, hey, I'm sure you have other people who want to come and be a part of the village, because you know everybody likes to do what we do. And they said, we do. But the challenge, though, is that we tell them that they can't. And we tell them it's because we engage in ancestral veneration here. And if we are uplifting your ancestors, they may be the people who have enslaved us, or who participated in brutality against us, and that would be disrespectful to our ancestors, and we're not willing to risk it. So, sorry, you just don't have a place here, and they're very clear about that, and I appreciated that. So, that is my sharing about my summer vacation, and just recognizing that we go all over the world, we do cultural tours, and we learn about Africanness all over the world. But we also have a lot of it here that we are engaged in and that we need to celebrate and appreciate and see. Ashe. So this is our time, the time for our closing. If we could come together and join hands for our traditional closing. Family reunion, Labor Day weekend. Anyway, the point is, it'll be on the 1st, and we need folks to work the Wose booth. So if you could please let me know what time you're available to work the booth, that would be lovely. And I'll send out an email as well. Mama Carol?
Just a reminder that Southern Mother Mountain has some of his things for sale over there. Everybody wants to buy them. And then if you're not wanting to go straight home today, for the afternoon, the Trinidad and Tobago Cultural Association is doing their annual gathering, which is kind of like a picnic, and I have the details on that. It's going until 6 p.m.
Thank you. And let me apologize for going over so long. I planned to stop at 12:30, and I wasn't looking at the clock, so sorry about that. Anyway.
Brother Damu was in effect tonight, too.
It's significant to have cultural production focused on everyday people and people rather than on, the cultural production that is corporatized. So it was really good, and we need to do that, and thank you for being a leader and, demonstrating some new models of how we can get along in our families. We need that.
Yes. How's it going on? Ileoma Day opens September 4th. So, there's cleaning, well, I don't know of any clean up day per se, but every day you can clean up.
Okay.
So they're, have finished doing some of the floors and things. So there are walls that need to be washed, most definitely. Stairwells need to be washed down, things like that. So if you have any time before September 4th, please come, and there's someone at the school every day. This next week they'll be doing teacher training. So they'll be down in the sanctuary, but upstairs will be open for cleaning up one last time.
If I can. Usually on the fourth Sunday there is a report from the council member. This is the fourth Sunday. There's usually a community meeting on the fourth Sunday. And usually on the fifth Saturday of the month there's a cleanup day scheduled for the community. And I know that we have the flexibility to schedule things when we want to, so not that anyone's, you need to pay attention to these things right now and here and now, but in the future, it'd be nice to keep it moving.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Any other announcements?
Other questions? Anybody going to the Trinidad thing from here?
do our closing. Oh, okay, looks like Mama Carol. Oh, okay. All right, looks like Sister Connie is ready to come in.
No, my cousin, I need to get this. Yeah, and she brings, shutterfly. My cousin, that is beautiful.
That's a start, you know?